Bam. What up, y'all? Welcome back. And in this video, I am going to do my best to describe to you guys an amalgamation of a lot of different things that I've been looking at. Somebody asked me in a fairly recent video to talk about synchronicities. And I was putting off that video because I really wanted to kind of do it justice, and being that I've been fascinated by this topic before and I've experienced my fair share of synchronicities, I wanted to, like I said, do it in a way where I thought that it was actually going to be cohesive, valuable, all of that jazz. Somebody else mentioned Carl Jung on my video that I posted about the Lion's Gate and the 888. And so let's bridge the gaps here. Reality is like a simulation. The way that Neville Goddard talks about reality, another way of describing it is that it's like a simulation. You are having this impact, and Neville talks about states. And you hear Elmer O. Locker, he talks about this in his videos all the time, about the simulation and using that metaphor, that example. So it's not even really a metaphor, it just really is the way that it is. And so the states that Neville Goddard talks about, he always talks about coming from the state, and how that is the key ingredient that we need to get our outer manifestation. So what are these states? He talks about who is the version of yourself, that state of consciousness that already has this thing. What is that? Where do these states come from? So to use a very simple example, when you are interacting with your parents, you are coming from the state of son, daughter. When you're interacting with your teachers, you are coming from the state of student. We slip in and out of these states all the time, right? You might be playing uncle with your niece or aunt or whatever. In the workplace, you're occupying a different state. When you speak to your boss is when you come home and speak to your significant other. So another way of understanding states is characters in a story. Tufty and Tufty the Priestess talks about how we are living a film role, a story. We're like a movie. The issue is that we lose consciousness when we identify too much with that certain character. Another way of looking at this is archetypes. And this is actually the real juice of what I'm talking about, because Carl Jung talks about archetypes. When we identify with certain archetypes, there's something about human consciousness. We as human beings, we see things in symbols. So in the tarot cards, you see king, magician, warrior, lover. There are all these archetypes that exist. The inner child. You can tap in and out of these archetypes, aka states. And now you are tapping into different stories. Because as you play a different archetype or a different character or a different state of consciousness, different viewpoint in your reality, the story is going to become reflected. The story is going to reflect that archetype that you are playing. When you come to realize, we all think, see, we're looking at this story. When you watch a movie and you are watching Harry Met Sally, whatever movie you're watching it, right? You're observing it. So you're in the observer role, and you're able to see what these characters are doing. You're able to see how one decision or the way that the character's acting might play out in the story, and you have this more bird's eye view of the story. But those characters in that movie, every time you play that movie, they're simply following the script. They can't see beyond the current circumstance. It's another analogy you can use is like you're in a maze, you're in a labyrinth, and you are the mouse or the character that's walking around the maze, and all you see is the wall in front of you. That's all that you see. But us, as the human creators of the mousetrap or the maze, the labyrinth that we put this mouse in, we're able to see the entire thing. So we know, oh, he went this way, that's going to be a dead end. We can see that the entirety of the labyrinth, we can see how it's constructed, and we can see how one choice leads to another that leads to another that ends out to the outcome, the desirable outcome. So let's get back. How do we tie all these ideas together? You might be wondering, like, why are you talking about all this stuff? How does it all relate to each other? So here's how it relates. So when you are in this labyrinth, you don't have, all you're getting is like this, it's this, another way of thinking about it is like you're looking at this pixel. Like you're looking at a JPEG image and all you see is the pixel because you're so zoomed in. But when we zoom out from the image, you see the context of the entire image. You see how it's all those pixels are necessary to complete the entire image. And when you are able to take that perspective, zoom out, detach from this character, this current character in the film role. This is why all these teachings. I've been listening to this guy Gurdjieff. He's another spiritual teacher, and he talks about the fourth way, and a lot of his ideas coincide with Tufte, because what is it that we have to do as this character that's stuck in the maze, stuck in the film role, in the current script? We have to begin to observe. We have to begin to observe this character that we're playing. What is it this character, what way is the character moving? What way is the character thinking? What emotions is this character feeling on an ongoing basis? What emotional expressions is this character engaged in? If we're constantly getting triggered by the environment, expressing negative emotions, well, Gurdjieff, Tufte, a lot of these spiritual teachers, the Stoics, they all tell us that we're not in control. We're not in control of ourselves. We're not in control of, and when we're not in control of ourselves, we are now not in control of the story. We are stuck in the simulation, being pawns in a game from whoever. I'm not going to get into who the architect of this game is because that goes beyond the scope of this conversation. But when you lose your ability to decide, you've lost your free will. That's another way of looking at it. Tufte, she says all the time, you think you have free will, but you really don't. And that's when you are getting led around by the script. You're getting led around by your emotions. You're getting led around by that current character in the film role that you think that you are. But you see, we're simply actors on a stage. All the world is a stage, as Shakespeare said. And we're simply playing these different roles. So the ability to observe yourself, the ability to really check in with yourself, become conscious, wake up from this script, wake up from this movie that we're in, that's when we get to see. That's when we get to see, oh, you know what? I've been playing in the victim archetype. I've been playing the victim role. Or I've been playing maybe you've been playing not the victim, maybe you've been playing the persecutor, maybe you've been playing that role. Maybe you're in the role of the savior, constantly going around and saving everybody, thinking that it's your responsibility to constantly pull everybody out. And now you're in this drama triangle. That's what they call it in psychology, where the victim needs either a persecutor or they need a savior. The victim can't exist without one of those. But by following in any of those three archetypes, you necessitate the other two. If you find yourself that when you begin to observe yourself, all you're thinking is all these negative thoughts, why me? Or one of the other ones, I'm always the one saving everyone, Everyone always relies upon me. Well, now you're feeling energetically drained. You don't have enough time to put on your own oxygen mask. You're constantly worrying about others, and therefore you have, again, no real true autonomy because you're constantly being drained. So it's about learning what roles are we playing? What archetypes are we playing in this story? I was watching, I mentioned this on another video, a live stream of this woman talking about her relationships on Dylan James' channel, and all the women in the comments, even some of the men, were like, I can't, this woman is me. This woman's story, they're like, that's exactly what's been happening to me. So we come to find when we begin doing this work, that a lot of the problems that we think are so personal to us, that we identify with so hard to say, this is just me, this is just the way it is for me, they're actually a lot more common. They're actually a lot more universal. And it's because these archetypal states of consciousness really they exist already. All these different characters, all these different archetypes exist in the ethereal world. They exist as different states already. And what is happening is that those states are almost, Neville says we embody the state, but it's almost like these states are so powerful and so much beyond time and space that they occupy us. So when we decide to tap into that warrior energy, or we decide to tap into that king energy, now we're able to embody that energy. That energy is able to work through us. If you want to get really spiritual about this, one way that you can think about this is that the source creator, the absolute infinite all, fragmented off, right, into all of these different things. That's what a lot of spiritual teachings say. That's what we all have, these souls, but we're all still connected to this energetic field. Well, this creator had to create all of these different things to interact with itself. So it's created all these different roles that are opportunities for us to play in as well. But ultimately, it's up to us. You know, I just made the decision. I've been complaining. I found myself complaining recently because I don't have internet right now. And a lot of my workflow, as it pertains to making content, that's one of the reasons I haven't posted in the past couple days, is because I need internet. I need internet. I need an internet connection on my computer in order to, my entire workflow is based off being able to use the internet in order to make these videos, in order to make this content, in order to stir up my ideas and really bring something in the way that I want to. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to make a decision to work with what I can, do what I can with what I have, and just figure it out, because complaining isn't going to get me anywhere. But do you guys find yourselves complaining? Do you guys find yourself expressing negative emotion? Because when you really are on this journey, if you really are studying this and you really, really want to improve, you're going to realize at a certain point, expressing negative emotion, that's when you begin to, every single time you do that, there's this perverse pleasure that human beings get from doing this. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's some sort of return that we feel like we get when we do this by indulging in that victim type of narrative, in that victim type of mentality. And that's why you see a lot of people that just do this. They've been overtaken with that victim energy. Some people get overtaken with the persecutor energy, with the abuser energy. And then they need to find a victim to abuse, right? But all of these different types of energies, when you really zoom out and you look at your life, you can see how people are acting in this mechanical, unconscious way because they've allowed themselves to be taken over by this energy. Another thing that people say, and that people, I've witnessed myself, it looks like possession. If you're coming at it from a spiritual or perspective, it looks like this person's been possessed. And you notice that you see people and you're like, well, and you've even probably had this experience yourself where it's like, I know I'm going to regret doing this, but it's almost like I can't stop myself. That's how this archetype embodies people. And it can do it in the negative. It can also do it in the positive. Once you decide, you make that decision. I'm not going to complain anymore. I'm going to just figure it out. Now you are allowing that archetype, that warrior archetype, that king, that magician archetype to work in your favor. Because now you've made the decision. I'm making all conditions work in my favor. I'm using all conditions positively. All circumstances serve me. I'm making it so that all circumstances are serving me and all conditions serve me. And then to bring this all the way back full circle, now we're getting back to the topic of affirming. Because what affirming really is it's getting in touch with, it's instructing this energy that we are, this character that we are, and therefore our energy is going to begin to change. But there's different ways of going about it. I talked about in recent videos that just the feeling state, because sometimes you can just begin to occupy a different energy without even speaking, but that's more advanced. So for a lot of people, it helps to affirm it into being, myself included. And sometimes we slip in and out of these states, these higher states of awareness, where sometimes we get this flash and we're like, oh, we can perfectly embody that state. And Carl Jung talks about how this same idea that I'm speaking about, the reality is a simulation. The universe is, we are constantly in communication with the universe. So when you see the triple numbers and things like this that people talk about, really what that's communicating to you is that you are in alignment. When you begin to see these signs and synchronicities, like on my Lionsgate video that I posted, somebody posted comment to watch this guy Galahad Eratinus, I think that's how you pronounce his name, and that video he was expounding on a bunch of topics that I'm already familiar with and touching on some of the subjects that we're talking about here today. But that in itself was a synchronicity of me posting that video. I was like, you know what? I don't know if I should post this. I don't know if my audience is going to react well to this, because a lot of people in this space right now kind of just clown on that stuff. Angel numbers, numerology and things. And it's become trendy to be like, oh, astrology, that's stupid, right? But it's not. The thing is, we can override it because we are more powerful, but we're always in communication with the universe. These universal laws, these universal numbers exist. There's a law that Tesla always talks about 3, 6, and 9. Well, there's this law of 3, which I've come to realize recently, which is that everything always operates in 3s. If you notice, as human beings, we tend to gravitate towards the number 3. We use it a lot. We use it in our phone numbers. We use it when we group things together. Even in arranging things on a table, when you put 3 things together, now it looks like they're all meant to be there for whatever reason. The law of 3. The visual aid I always talk about. The really needing the attachment, the really avoiding it with fear, and then what we have in the middle is neutrality. And those are 3. There's 3 there. And anything that between any two extremes, there's a neutral state. So, covering a lot of different topics here, but if you want to be able to, and that's another way of saying this, if you want to be able to exit the simulation, if you want to be able to exert your will truly, not what you think your will is, because you've been hypnotized by the external, then you've got to detach from the script. You've got to detach from the narrative, and you've got to begin to think for yourself. You've got to realize that you are simply playing a character in a film. Reality can be likened to a film. It's an excellent model for viewing reality. And that when you take this higher perspective, now you'll be able to see how the decisions that you make and the decisions that your character is making, and able to operate, as Tufte says, in between the two screens. Most states you're either hypnotized, like completely like this. The best way that I can describe it visually is like, you're like this, all wide-eyed, looking at reality, hypnotized by reality, or you're in the inner, and it tends to usually be a bunch of negative thoughts. Why did this person say this? How come what is about this? I didn't pay these bills on time. All those concerns. And again, using this law of 3, there's a neutral state. There's an observer state that's not completely preoccupied with the outside, but that's not completely preoccupied inward. You see people that are just walking around like looking at their phones, like they look like zombies. People look like zombies nowadays. Instead, you take your attention back and you're able to observe yourself and reality. You're able to observe how this character that you are is interacting with reality. You're able to see things more objectively. You're able to actually make decisions rather than constantly reacting in a state of constant reaction all the time. And when you do this, when you're able to enter into that state of poise, of equilibrium, where you can see yourself and reality, and then be consciously aware of the way that you're interacting with reality, now you're beginning to exit that simulation. There's so many ideas, and I'm going to be interviewing some people soon about synchronicity, the shadow, archetypes, all these ideas that Carl Jung speaks about, because they apply to exiting this simulation. They apply to gaining that perspective so that we're able to begin to shift the story, shift the movie, shift the script, able to have some choice rather than just following blindly. Because that's what most people do. Most people just blindly follow the script. And you can see this if you're paying attention, if you're watching your reality, if you're on this channel right now, you already have more of an awareness about these things than your average person. So just begin to notice the people around you and how they can't help themselves. But it's very easy to see in other people. And when you see it in other people, then you'll be able to say, okay, I'm doing the same thing to a large extent. There's certain things that happen and I have this uncontrollable gut reaction. It takes time, it's a process. But look, if you really want results, it's not these easy videos, oh, manifest your thing overnight. It's self-mastery, mastery over the self, understanding of the self, being able to shift, being able to identify what type of archetype am I embodying right now? Is it going to be counterproductive? Where does this story end up if I keep embodying this archetype? And then consciously choosing to shift into that archetypal state. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. I hope this was valuable. Drop this with a like, hit me with a subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. And let me know down below, out of any of these topics, anything that you guys would be really curious about hearing more of soon. See you guys in the next one.